My husband and I had had a fight, and a week after our worst fight in 50 years, a woman I had never met knocked on my door, raised her left hand, and showed me a ring with the wedding date engraved inside. "My name is Eleanor," she said evenly. "I am your husband's wife." I swayed for a moment, like a boat spinning in a slow current. The kettle clicked in the kitchen. Behind the woman stood two children, a boy and a girl, each with a backpack. The girl looked at me the way a child looks at a thundercloud, trying to guess whether it will rain. "Can I come in?" Eleanor asked. "He said he told you." "He told me a lot," I answered, stepping aside. My hands were not shaking. I poured tea into the good cups, the ones my mother had given me. Eleanor did not take off her coat. She spoke carefully, as if picking a splinter from a stem. "We were married 12 years ago. He said you were divorced. He said you were a bad wife. Difficult." She pulled a folder from her bag, school forms, insurance policies, a photograph of him wearing a paper crown at a childhood birthday party I didn't know existed. In the photo, he was holding a knife over a sailboat cake. My husband had never liked boats. The boy whispered, "Mum, is that our dad over there?" His gaze slid down the hallway, to the photos of our grown children and us, to the framed school portrait of my granddaughter with her missing front tooth. How could the man who had held my hand at every important moment for so many years build an entire parallel life with the same hands? She hadn't come to fight me. She came because her children deserved the truth, and because loving the same liar had made us, against our will, a kind of family. They thought I would cry. Instead, while the kettle cooled, I made a list in my head. Bank accounts he didn't know I could freeze, the number for the pensions department, a neighbor who works in the court, where to find a lawyer, and how to take away from him everything he didn't deserve. None of them suspected that I had been preparing for this day since the night he started blocking his phone. A week before Elena knocked on my door, our fight started over something that looked small from the outside. He wouldn't put his phone down at dinner. It vibrated against the table, over and over like a trapped bee. He moved it to his lap, then the counter, then the pocket of the coat hanging by the back door. When I asked who kept calling, he said, "It's work," even though he retired last spring. "I made stew," I said, ladling broth into his bowl. "Hot enough to fog your glasses. You'll miss it cold." He didn't look up. "Leave it." "I'm not hungry." He used to eat anything I put in front of him. He used to tilt the bowl and drink the last of the broth. He used to tell me his day before I had the sense to ask. I took his bowl and set it in the sink, not making a show of it, not clanging the spoon. "You don't have to lie," I said. "I'm not the warden here." He stood then. "What do you want from me, Nora?" "Some days are heavy. I don't have to narrate them. It's the secrecy I can't stand. You sit at my table and vanish into your screen." "Your table?" His laugh was short, the kind he used when a cashier made a mistake and he wanted her to know he noticed. "When did everything become yours?" The old dance, the old script. I had no appetite for it. "When I started paying the mortgage while you were between jobs," I said, calm as I could manage. "When I balanced the books with a pencil stub so we could keep this roof. When I worked nights at the hospital desk and learned how to drink bad coffee without flinching." "You never let me forget," he said. "What else should I let you do?" I asked. "Forget me?" He pushed his chair back. It scraped the floor. "I'm going for a walk." He left his coat. The phone vibrated again, left, then right, like a tiny heartbeat. I didn't touch it. I told myself not touching was a kind of strength. I told myself he would come back calmer. I washed the ladle and wiped the stove. I opened the window because the stew's steam had made the kitchen feel too close. The air coming in smelled like wet leaves and something faintly sweet. A neighbour's laundry, I guessed, or the last pears rotting under the Fitzgerald's tree. He didn't come back for 3 hours. When he did, he moved around me in a careful circle, like I was a hot pan he didn't want to bump. He took a shower, came out with his hair combed, and put on the good shirt I bought him last Christmas. He took the coat. He took the phone. "Going somewhere?" I said. "Jack's," he lied without blinking. "Cards. You never liked cards." "Maybe I like them now." He was 69 years old and trying out a new personality, like a teenager changing a haircut. I watched him leave, and the quiet that followed had weight. The house had its own breath, the sigh of ducts settling, the clock's tiny ticks. I've learned over a long life that when a lie is healthy, it feeds itself. It grows shiny fur and a steady heartbeat. It becomes a pet. That night, his lie came home at 2 a.m, smelling faintly of perfume that was not mine and soap that was not ours. He slid into bed without a word. I turned my back and watched the red light of the alarm clock creep from 2:07 to 2:08 to 2:09. In the morning, I found the second phone. It was in the pocket of the coat by the back door, the one he wore for walks. A cheap model, practical. New messages stacked like plates in the notification bar. An unfamiliar number labeled Elena Work. I didn't open anything, I didn't need to. I turned it face down on the table and waited for him to notice. He noticed after his shower. He came into the kitchen in his robe, saw the phone, and stopped. The mask he used for the world slid a little. His voice came out softer than I expected. "You went through my things?" "I moved nothing," I said. "I tidied." "It fell out. I picked it up. It's not a crime to lift what lies at your feet." He reached for it. I put my palm over it, just enough to feel its warmth. "Who is Eleanor?" I asked. She's a client," he said. "You're not a consultant," I said. "Not anymore." "Old contacts still call, you know that. They ask advice, for which you need a second phone." He bristled. "I don't like your tone." I didn't like my tone either. I sounded like a detective in a bad show, rehearsing questions the audience could answer for me. I lifted my hand. He snatched the phone, tucked it into his robe, and turned away. "I won't be cross-examined in my own kitchen," he said, and the door clicked behind him a minute later. We didn't speak for 2 days. We moved around each other like people in a narrow hallway, avoiding hip and shoulder. I watered the plants. He raked the leaves into neat piles and left them there as if completion were too much to ask. On the third day, we fought again, and this time it had teeth. He said I scrutinized him. He said I counted his pills to make sure he took them. He said I had a way of making a man feel small with facts. I said if facts made him feel small, he might consider growing in their direction. He told me I was cruel. I told him I'd be kinder to a stranger. He left again, and 7 days later, Eleanor stood on my porch wearing a ring with my wedding date carved inside. I've already told you how she introduced herself, how the children stood with chilly cheeks, how the air inside my house felt briefly tilted. What I didn't say is that after I set her tea down, I excused myself and went into the bedroom. I opened the top drawer of my dresser and pulled out the folder I keep where any burglar would be embarrassed to find it, behind the 3 pairs of thick socks I wear when the winter gets stubborn. The label isn't coy. I wrote in big letters with a black marker. House, bank, pension. I brought it back and slid it onto the table. Elena's eyes flicked to the tab. She lowered her cup but didn't reach. I'm offended on your behalf, I said. And on mine. I'm angry, but this will be easier if we root it in paper. She nodded. Her children sat straighter. The boy's backpack had a superhero keychain on the zipper pull. The girl's hair was in 2 braids so tight they shone. I wondered if Elena had combed them that morning with her jaw clenched the way I used to when our son wouldn't hold still. We married 12 years ago, she said again, not apologizing for repetition. At first he wanted to wait, but then he said he needed it official to add me to his insurance. He said his divorce had been finalized and all that remained was changing paperwork. I don't know your laws. I trusted him. You're not on trial here, I said. You and I both believed the same man. She took a breath. He told me he had 2 adult children. He said you were happier without him. He said you were... I don't like repeating this, but you should know. He said you were careless with money. I nearly laughed. I looked down at my hands, the veins like blue strings, the skin thin as rice paper, and I saw my mother's fingers. What time did to us both. Careless, I said. That's a new name for diligence. Eleanor opened her own folder. Insurance forms, school registration, a photograph of him cutting a cake shaped like a sailboat. He threw the knife away after photos, she said, a small, strange detail that stuck. He said it was cheap. She hesitated, then added, he doesn't like messy things. Messy things tell the truth, I said. They leave stains. Stains save us more often than they ruin us. We spent an hour comparing dates. I wrote them in a small notebook with a rubber band around it. Our wedding date, his retirement, the birth dates of Elena's children, the hospital stay when he had his knee replaced, and I slept in a chair 2 nights. A business trip he took the same week her daughter's school listed him as an emergency contact. The seams showed. The overlap was obscene. When they left, Eleanor shook my hand. I will not harm you, she said. I think he has harmed us both enough for any one lifetime. I watched them go down the walkway, 3 figures framed by the brown shrubs. The sky had that early winter colour, not quite grey, a scraped white like the bottom of a well-washed pan. I went back inside, dialed the number I keep on a yellow sticky note under the sugar bowl, and asked for an appointment with Miss Morales. Rita Morales is 10 years younger than I am and twice as unafraid. She wears her hair in a blunt grey bob and her glasses low on her nose. When she frowns, she looks like the teacher who sent notes home in 2nd grade, the ones that made you sit better in your chair without understanding why. She met me in her office the next morning, moved a stack of thick files to one side and said, "Tell me everything. Pretend the clock isn't running yet." I told her most of it. Not the parts about the apple cake or the perfume, not the tight braids or the superhero keychain. The law uses the bones of a story. It doesn't need the small muscles that let it move. I told her about the second phone. I told her about the ring with my date inside. I told her about Eleanor's folder. I told her I did not, under any circumstance, wish to be pitied. "Do you want to leave him?" she asked. "I want the truth to be public," I said. "I want to keep my house. I want his pension protected from whatever new life he's financing. I want the children he brought into this world to be supported. I want my granddaughter to know her grandmother is not a fool." Good, she said. We can work with that. She made a list. She likes lists. So do I. First, we confirm whether a divorce exists, she said. Sometimes men try to paper over their lives with lies. Sometimes they get sloppy and there's real paper somewhere. Second, we freeze what we can. Joint accounts, credit lines, change your online passwords, check beneficiary designations on the pension and any life insurance. If he changed them without your consent, we raise hell. Third, we document every message, every timeline. If you have the stomach for it, we reach out to Eleanor for sworn statements. She sounds steady. I nodded. She is steady. Fourth, we consider immediate protective measures in case he tries something aggressive. Temporary restraining order if he shows up angry. And I want you to talk to your doctor. Request a letter stating you are competent, taking your medications as prescribed, and managing your daily affairs. If he tries to claim you're not, we shut that door. Why would he claim that? She looked over her glasses. Because men like your husband run out of clean exits. When the exits narrow, they don't look for a different road. They try to widen the door with fire. I left with 3 tasks and a spine like a steel rod running through me. At home, I took the binder from behind the socks and added Ms. Morales's card to the first sleeve. I called the bank, and the young man on the phone spoke to me with a politeness so perfect it made me want to cry. He helped me set temporary spending limits and text alerts. He added a note to my file. Call customer before authorizing changes to joint accounts. He told me he liked that I still came into the branch sometimes to deposit checks. It makes the line feel alive, he said, and I thanked him as if he'd handed me something fresh-baked. I called the pension office and said the words, Miss. Morales taught me, spousal consent is required for beneficiary changes. Please flag my account. I called the life insurance company and requested copies of any recent forms. I set freeze notices with the credit bureaus. I changed the code on the garage door. I put a small camera on the porch, pointed at the walk, not because I expected danger, but because proof is always better than memory. I wrote to Eleanor and asked if we could meet at the coffee shop near the courthouse. She agreed. When we sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a paper cup as if heat itself should be held tight, I explained my plan. I don't want to ruin you, I said. I want to hold him accountable. You are generous, she said. I'm practical. Your children need support. That means pursuing what is true. If his marriage to you is invalid because he never divorced me, we'll fix what we can, not by pretending your life didn't happen, but by correcting how he built it. She nodded. I can give you everything. I kept records. I am careful because life taught me to be. She slid a folder across the table, thicker now than the one she brought to my kitchen. Copies of texts, receipts, a photo of a lease with his signature, a birthday card he'd written to her daughter. To my sailor, he wrote beneath a cartoon boat. He never liked boats. I held the card and imagined his hand moving the pen, choosing the word, stepping into a life where the same paper crown suited him twice. Across the street, the courthouse door opened and closed, letting out a brief rectangle of warm light into the cold. I saw Clara then, my neighbour from 2 houses down. She works at the clerk's office, has since her hair was still the colour of coffee. Now it's the colour of morning frost, and she wears lipstick the exact rose of her cheeks when she laughs. I excused myself and met her on the sidewalk. How are you, Nora? She asked, taking in my face with those clerk's eyes that miss nothing, not even the things you don't bring to the counter. I need records, I said. Marriage and non-divorce. Honey, she said, you don't have to be coy. Come by desk 3 tomorrow. Bring names and dates. I'll pull what's public. If what you need isn't here, I'll tell you where to go get it. The next afternoon, desk 3 delivered. There was no record of divorce for us. None. Not filed here, not filed in the adjoining county. There was, however, a marriage license 12 years ago in a county across the river to a woman named Eleanor. I paid for copies and put them in my folder. I stood on the courthouse steps, feeling the air press my coat against my shoulders. Some people would have wept there. I didn't. I walked home and made soup. He came home 2 nights later as if nothing had changed. He shrugged off his coat. He kissed my cheek. He asked what smelled so good. Soup, I said. I added thyme. He sat, spoon in hand, and for a minute we looked like any pair of aging people making their way through a Tuesday. The illusion held until I set the marriage certificate on the table. He stared at it, then at me. His face went flat. He set the spoon down carefully, like he was placing a small, sleeping animal. What is this? You tell me, I said. It bears your name and a date that overlaps my own life. It's a mistake, he said. The clerk made it, I asked. Or the pastor? He rubbed his temple. I don't owe you, he began, and I watched him choose a path away from confession, down into grievance, as if that road were better lit. You owe me the courtesy of facts, I said, unless you plan to argue in front of a judge that facts are unkind. What judge? He said. The one who will listen to my attorney if we have to talk there. He laughed. He always thought court was for other people, men in handcuffs on television, women in too bright dresses asking for things they didn't deserve. He forgot I'd sat at a hospital desk for years, learning how to speak to men in suits by watching how the nurses did it. He tried to turn the conversation to my tone again. He tried to accuse me of snooping. He tried to shame me for bringing paper to the table. When none of that worked, he stood and said, You'll regret making a scene. What scene? You and I, sitting with soup and a copy of The Truth? He took the coat, the second phone, and the door closed behind him. 2 mornings later, a man came to the house with a piece of paper and the careful walk of someone who has practiced empathy without owning it. He served me with a petition, emergency guardianship. The words felt like cold water down my spine. According to the petition, I was exhibiting signs of cognitive decline, mismanaging household funds, and endangering my own welfare and that of others. He had checked boxes I didn't know existed. The hearing was set for the following Tuesday. For a moment, the kitchen swam. How could the man who forgot to replace the light bulb above the sink find his way through a maze this dark? Then Miss Morales' voice came back to me. When the exits narrow, they widen the door with fire. I called her. She said, Good. We like when they show their hand. She told me to meet her at her office with my list, my doctor's letter, my bank logs, the notes from the pension office, the copies from Clara's desk 3. Also bring a statement from Eleanor, if she can offer one. We will not pit wife against wife, but a sworn account of his double life goes to capacity and motive. Eleanor met me at the coffee shop with the steady hands of a woman who has already cried at home and is done for the day. She signed her statement. She looked up after and said, He told me you drank. The shame in her face wasn't hers. It belonged to the lie she had to carry to repeat. I drink tea, I said. When my granddaughter visits, we put honey in it. She smiled then, small and real. He told me I could trust him, she said. I wanted a partner. I didn't need perfect. Perfect is sterile, I said. It doesn't hold. You and I, we're made of the stuff that holds. At the hearing, I wore my navy dress and the shoes with the low heel that make me feel like my feet are part of the ground. The courtroom was colder than it needed to be. Miss Morales placed her files on the table with a satisfying slap. He sat on the other side with a lawyer I'd never seen, a man whose suit looked more expensive than it needed to be. Eleanor was a rowback, hands folded in her lap. Her children at school because innocence should be protected where we can. The judge was a woman with a voice like a clean blade. She read the petition. She looked at me. Mrs. Keene, she said. I still had his name then. Do you understand what this proceeding is about? I do, Your Honor, I said. Do you manage your daily affairs? She asked. I do, I said, and Ms. Morales handed over the doctor's letter, the bank logs, the list of appointments I'd kept and attended in the last 6 months, including an eye exam where I'd had the sense to get new lenses before the winter's glare turned the roads into glass. The judge read. She asked questions. I answered. When his lawyer tried to interrupt, she held up a hand. You'll have your turn, she said. When his turn came, he spoke softly, all injured tones and careful concern. He said he had watched me forget things. He said I had once left the stove on. He said I had accused him of crimes because I was anxious. Sir, the judge said, still with the clean blade voice, did you file for divorce from your wife? He shifted. It's complicated, he said. It is not. Miss Morales laid the copy of his second marriage certificate on the table, the ink like a bruise against the white. We submit this as evidence of motive and misrepresentation. We are also prepared to present a sworn statement from Miss Elena R., who sits in the second row, regarding the defendant's statements about his marital status at the time of his second marriage. His lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Eleanor stood. Her voice did not shake. She told the court what he'd told her, and the room changed temperature. Even the suited man shifted in his chair. When the judge denied the guardianship, she did it without flourish. She stated her reasons into the record. She used language that didn't need adjectives. Petition denied, she said. There is no evidence of incapacity. There is evidence of potential spousal misconduct. This court refers the matter to the appropriate authorities for review. Then she looked at me, not past me, not through me, but at me, and said, Mrs. Keene, you are not obligated to share a roof with a man who undermines your rights. Speak with your counsel about protective orders and financial protections. Outside the courtroom, he followed me into the hall. That was unnecessary, he said, the mask slipping. You made me look like a fool. I turned. People have told me my eyes are kind when I am patient. I was not patient then. You did that yourself, I said. He leaned in, as if proximity would repair what distance had revealed. We can fix it, Nora. You and I. We've been together too long to burn it down. You already lit the match, I said. He tried another angle. Think of the children, he said. I am, I said. All of them. The next week held paperwork. Miss Morales filed for legal separation on my behalf and began the process of divorce, tedious and clean. We petitioned for exclusive use of the home. We asked the court to freeze joint assets pending distribution. We requested an injunction preventing him from changing beneficiaries or moving funds. We proposed a spousal support arrangement while matters were sorted. We noted the existence of minor children in his second household and added the word responsibility to our sentences where it belonged. Clara kept her ears open at desk 3. She called me one afternoon and said, "You didn't hear this from me, but someone filed a quit-claim deed on your house last month. The signature looks clumsy." The world went quiet around the word quit-claim, as if sound itself obeyed the law and paused while I thought. "Filed where?" I asked. "In the adjoining county. It's not recorded here yet. The name notarized is a man who's had complaints. I'm sending you a screenshot, but you'll need your lawyer to get the full copy." I thanked her, hung up, and sat at the table with my hands flat on the wood. How many times had he looked at this table and thought, if I just move this paper from here to there, everything will be mine. Miss Morales moved fast. She filed a notice of fraudulent conveyance and a lis pendens on the house, the legal equivalent of a bright ribbon around a gift that says, "Do not touch." She contacted the notary board and the district attorney's office with a packet of documents that spoke louder than my anger ever could. When she told me the notary had been suspended 2 years earlier and was still stamping, I felt a kind of grief for the small machinery of law that wears out like people do. In the meantime, I changed the locks. I placed copies of the restraining order by the door, by the phone, by the bed. I told the neighbor across the street, quietly, without melodrama, what to do if she saw him try to let himself in. I put the good china in a box and left it with my granddaughter's other grandmother, because loss is easier in small objects than in structures. He called. He left messages that were alternately cold and soft. In one, he said he forgave me for embarrassing him. In another, he said he would burn the house down before he let me win. I saved both. Threats wear well in court. Elena kept her side steady. She enrolled her children in counseling. She told them, as simply as she could, that their father had made mistakes and that grown-ups sometimes did hard things to correct them. She did not use the word bigamy. She did not use the word fraud. She called me once and said, "The boy asked if he could still like boats." "Of course he can," I said. Boats didn't lie to him. The first twist that truly surprised him came not from me, but from the pension office. They sent a letter stating that any beneficiary change in the last 6 months was invalid without my notarized consent. He had submitted one with a signature that wasn't mine. They knew because I had come in last year to update my address, and they'd scanned my signature then. The two didn't match. Numbers don't mind lies. Ink minds them very much. He came to the house that afternoon, furious enough to be foolish. He pounded on the door. The doorbell rang 3 times, long as a funeral. I didn't open it. I called the police. "He's here in violation of an order," I said. "He is angry." "I am not interested in talking." The young officer who arrived spoke to me with professional distance and human eyes. "We'll handle it," she said. When they led him to the car, he looked at me through the thin glass. I did not wave. That night, the house felt different. Not safer, exactly, but aligned. The walls felt like they were standing with me. I went to the bedroom and opened the window for a minute to let the cold air rush in. It made the curtains lift and fall like lungs. I slept without dreams. The second twist came from a place I didn't expect. A fundraising page I found by accident. A neighbor's niece sent me a link saying, "Is this your husband?" There was his face, and a story about his sudden medical crisis. The page asked for money to cover unexpected bills. He had posted photos of himself in a hospital gown from knee surgery 2 years earlier, as if that were now. He wrote about a wife who could not care for herself, me, and stepchildren who needed his steady presence, Eleanor's children. The comments were full of kindness, the way people pour water when they hear of fire. I sat with my hands in my lap for a full minute, counting my breaths, because I did not want to do anything rash. Then I printed the page, 3 copies. I sent one to Miss Morales. I sent one to the district attorney's office, addressed to the woman who'd answered the phone the day before and said, "Send me proof. We love proof." I sent one to Eleanor with a note that said only, "We will put out this too." Miss Morales called within an hour. "We will add this to the file," she said. "It goes to pattern. It goes to intent." "What about the people he tricked?" I asked. "We'll add restitution to our demands," she said. "Not because we're saints, but because a judge likes tidy endings." In the divorce proceedings, his lawyer tried 3 strategies in quick succession: deny, minimize, and blame. Deny. It wasn't really a marriage, just a ceremony. Minimize. Elena knew. Blame. I had pushed him away with my controlling nature. Miss Morales doesn't raise her voice. She raises her evidence. She laid out the timeline. She placed the marriage license by the insurance addendum where he listed Eleanor as spouse. She added in the school form where he signed father. She included the guardianship petition where he called me incompetent the same week he posted online about my cruelty. She added Eleanor's sworn statement. She added the notary complaint. She added the pension letter. She added the restraining order violation police report. The table looked like the opposite of chaos. It looked like a good quilt. My son came to one of the hearings. He leaned forward in the pew with his elbows on his knees like a teenager at a game. He saw me after and put his hands on my shoulders. "Mum," he said, voice thick. "I didn't know." I believed him. "You've always loved your father for the parts of him I loved," I said. "Those parts were real. The rest is also real." He nodded. "Do you want me at the next one?" he asked. "If you can bear it," I said. He could. He sat with Elena in the same row, 2 people drawn into a shape they didn't choose, holding a shared edge. The day of the property hearing had weather that matched my life. Cold, bright, clear enough to see what you'd rather not. We asked the court to void the fraudulent quitclaim. We asked to secure the house in my name. We asked that he be barred from encumbrances it further. His lawyer argued that the document had been signed with my implied consent, a phrase that made even the judge's eyebrows lift. Consent is a word jealous of its modifiers. It prefers simple company. The judge ruled from the bench. "The quitclaim deed appears fraudulent," she said. "It is set aside. The property remains part of the marital estate pending distribution. Given the evidence of attempted misappropriation, I'm granting Mrs. Keene exclusive possession of the home during these proceedings." Outside, Eleanor slipped her hand into mine. "Do you breathe easier?" she asked. "For a step," I said. "There are more steps." The third twist arrived not in an envelope, but in a text from Clara. "You won't believe who walked in today." 10 minutes later, she called. "The notary," she said, he came to file something else. I recognized his name. I asked a question, and he answered it all by accident. He thought I was a fool. "What did he say?" I asked. "That your husband brought him papers, told him you were out of town and couldn't be bothered to come in. He said he stamped them in the parking lot. He said it was no big deal." "Did you record him?" I asked, thinking of the little recorder I kept near the sugar bowl the night of the guardianship conversation. "I'm not careless," she said. And I loved her in that moment the way you love friends you didn't earn, only welcomed. I asked him to repeat himself while I found the right form. The little light on my screen did the rest. Miss Morales took that recording and added it to our file. The district attorney took it and added it to theirs. When the notary was arrested a week later, he looked confused in his mugshot, as if the laws he broke were only the rules of a game he didn't understand. The last hearing was both the most important and the one I dreaded, the finalization of the divorce and the distribution of property. I had been married to him for 50 years. I had belonged to him for fewer and fewer of them. When the judge asked if the marriage was irretrievably broken, I said yes with a voice that didn't tremble. When she asked if there was any possibility of reconciliation, I said no and looked down at my hands. You can grieve a house while still living in it. You can grieve a man while he is still alive. Miss Morales spoke for me where I could not. She asked for what we had earned. She agreed to what was fair. We didn't try to starve him. We asked to keep what was mine, to return what he took, to secure the future in a way that didn't punish the children he fathered while lying to us both. The judge awarded me the house. She awarded me the lion's share of the pension. She ordered restitution for the notary's fees and the legal costs I'd incurred chasing down lies. She ordered my husband to pay child support to Elena until her children were grown. She referred the fraud to the criminal court. She signed the protection order for another year, because threats don't vanish when ink dries. When it was done, I walked out of the courthouse into air that felt new. The sky had the same exact color as the morning I married him. Maybe all skies use the same paint. Eleanor stood beside me. We didn't hug. We stood shoulder to shoulder and watched the traffic flow like a river that didn't notice us. "Do you ever think about what might have been?" she asked. "Of course," I said. "But I try not to live there." "You can drown in hypotheticals." She smiled. "The boy's birthday is next month," she said. "He wants a cake shaped like a boat again." "Let him have it," I said. "We don't punish joy for what men did." When I got home, I took the folder from behind the socks one more time. I removed the thick stack of paper, the letters, the stamps of courts that now meant something different. I made one last list. Locksmith, alarm company, pension check date, the date the protection order expired. Then I added 2 more lines. Apple cake ingredients and call granddaughter about her school play. That weekend, my granddaughter came to help me bake. I showed her how to cut apples thin so they sink just right into the batter. She told me her part in the play was a tree. "Trees don't have lines," she said, sounding put out and hopeful in the same breath. "They do," I said. "They speak with standing." She laughed and asked what that meant. "It means they don't move for nonsense," I said, and she nodded as if she understood. A week later, Eleanor and her children came by with a thank you card the girl had drawn herself, the edges lined in small, careful boats. The boy asked if he could see my garden. We walked out back, and I introduced them to the herbs by name: thyme, sage, rosemary, as if they were old friends. I showed them the pear tree. The boy asked if he could climb it. I said yes, but slowly but carefully, but watch your feet. He climbed halfway and looked out over the fence at the street below, where life goes on with people carrying bags and looking at their phones and stepping over the places where pears fall and rot and feed the soil for next year's blossoms. Elena stood beside me. "I don't know how to start again," she said, quiet. "You already have," I said. That night, I found an envelope in the mailbox, stamped from the county jail. I knew the handwriting. He wrote that he was sorry. He wrote that he had been under stress. He wrote that if I had been more understanding, None of this would have happened. Old habits, old roads. I didn't write back. Some words don't need answers. I put the letter in the folder for the record, but later I took it out and fed it to the fireplace. Paper makes a sound when it burns, like an old map, tearing. It smelled awful for a moment and then like nothing. People asked me after, in whispers and in ordinary voices, how I had the strength. I don't have more strength than anyone else my age. I have habits. I have lists. I have the stubborn belief that my life belongs to me even after the center of it shifts. I have friends with steady hands and neighbors with recordings on their phones. I have a lawyer who knows that evidence beats speeches. I have a granddaughter who thinks trees speak. And I have the apple cake recipe, written in my mother's hand, butter stains marking the places where you turn the page. When the protection order came up for renewal the following year, I sat in the same courtroom with the same navy dress. The judge asked if I felt safe without it. I said I felt fine, but fine is not the same as safe. She extended it for another 12 months. He didn't appear. He had moved to a small apartment 2 towns over with windows that faced a parking lot. He'd found a job at a hardware store. He told people his first wife was bitter and his second was unreasonable. Perhaps they were kind to his face. Perhaps they rolled their eyes when he turned away. It wasn't my concern anymore. Eleanor found work at a clinic. She told me once, "I meet women every week who don't know what documents to ask for. I keep a list now. I keep copies. I tell them not to be ashamed." She smiled then, a private smile, and added, "A clerk at the courthouse sends them to desk 3. Clara retired the spring after the last hearing. We threw her a party at the community center with store-bought cupcakes and coffee in giant silver urns. At the end, she hugged me, lipstick leaving a faint rose on my cheek. "You did right, Nora," she said. "You did it how it's supposed to be done. Slow where it needed slow. Fast where it needed fast." On the morning the divorce papers finally arrived in the mail, I set them on the table and made tea. I ran my fingers over my name where it was now my own again. I stood at the sink and watched the street. A man walked a dog. A woman carried a bag of oranges. The light on the maple made it look like it had been powdered with gold. I thought of the night we were young and stupid and in love, and walked home from a diner with our heads leaning together against the wind. I thought of the years we raised children, the nights we didn't turn the heat too high to save a few dollars, the way laughter still rose in that house when we invited it. I thought of the man who learned how to be 2 different husbands instead of one true one. And then I folded the papers, put them in the folder I no longer needed to hide, and placed the folder in a cabinet by the sink where I keep things I reach for now and then, not every day. In the afternoon, my granddaughter came by with a school flyer. "We're selling raffle tickets," she said, presentation ready. "What can I win?" I asked. "A basket," she said, "with chocolate and a blanket and a mug." "I like all those things," I said, and bought 5. After she left, I sat in the quiet that had a new kind of weight, not loneliness, not grief, something like gravity doing its job. I checked the locks out of habit. I turned off the lights I didn't need. I wrote in my notebook a line that matched the day. "The worst thing he did opened the door to the best thing I can still do, live with my face turned toward what is mine." That evening, Eleanor called. "The boy wants to know if he can invite you to his birthday," she said. "There will be a cake. There may be a boat." "I would be honored," I said. When I hung up, I looked around the kitchen. The table had a small scratch where a spoon had skidded years ago. The floor had a nick from the time my son dropped a pan, and we both jumped and then laughed. The curtains held the last of the day's light, like hands holding apricots. I closed the second phone account the next day. I don't know who he told. I don't care. The number was done ringing in my house. When I walked past the hardware store weeks later, I saw him through the window, head bent over a shelf of screws. He looked small the way everyone looks small when you see them through glass from far away. I kept walking. I had groceries to carry home and a cake to bake. Later that night, when the house was quiet and the streetlight made its pale pour across the floor, I thought back to the knock at my door, to the ring with my date inside, to the way the hallway tilted and then righted itself. People think revenge is hot. They imagine flames. Mine was sharp and clean. Mine was filing papers and keeping calm. Mine was giving his own actions back to him with the serial numbers intact. Mine was protecting children with names I didn't know a year ago, and a granddaughter who thinks trees talk. Mine was standing still while the storm blew itself past and left me vertical. I don't tell this story to be brave. I tell it because I wish someone had told it to me when I was 50 and thought love would bend the universe without cracking anything. Love is a tool, not a shelter. A shelter is something you build with walls and windows and locks, and a table big enough for whatever truth needs to be laid on it. If someone tries to burn it down, you use the tools you have. Paper, records, friends, a voice that does not tremble, an attorney who likes lists, a clerk who records the world. The kettle clicked off in the kitchen. I poured water over the tea and watched the steam rise. Outside, the air smelled like wet leaves and the faint sweetness of pears. The house breathed around me, the clock ticked, and the new quiet, mine, held.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.